So, we've covered an action game, a vehicular combat game, a role-playing game, and a fighting game. So what's next? Pop quiz. What game genre is the Xbox typically remembered for? Well, the same one that kickstarted it and lit a fire under its ass in the very beginning. First-person shooters. I find that this is what the general Xbox fan thinks of whenever the name of the system is mentioned. Not only that, but despite Microsoft's gaming platform growing in immense popularity and versatility in the last 12 years, its central image is still somehow shrouded in hails of gunfire and explosions and some of the most ridiculous comments ever to be filtered through a gaming headset thanks to Xbox Live. And you know, before 12-year-olds around the world made Call of Duty the untouchable mirage of recycled shit it is today, I prefer to think of the Halcyon days in the Xbox where you had, get this, a variety of options to scratch your itchy trigger finger. I'm talking about Unreal Championship, Rainbow Six, Ghost Recon, Star Wars Battlefront, Time Splitters, good console ports of Counter-Strike and Half-Life 2. You had Delta Force Black Hawk Down, you had Medal of Honor, you had Far Cry, you had various games in the James Bond universe. And yes, we also had Halo. But what about the rest, you know? The way I've always seen games is like this. You have your AAA blockbuster titles that the media continually shoves down our throats that cost development studios nowadays tens of millions of dollars to make. Everyone knows about those. But then you have games from smaller development studios that try and take ideas from those AAA games and they try to put a spin on their own unique universe they're building. And sometimes these games have unique characteristics that make these games stand out from everything else in the pile, and they actually make it a joy to play and make it memorable. So sometimes it works, other times, not so much.
For example, compare Duke Nukem 3D to games like Blood and Redneck Rampage, or a game like Doom to Rise of the Triad, or Command & Conquer to Act of War, Super Mario Bros. 3 to Adventure Island 3, Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link to Faxanadu and the Battle of Olympus, Double Dragon to Bad Dudes, Gradius 3 to UN Squadron, Mortal Kombat to Killer Instinct and One Must Fall 2097, Tetris to Dr. Mario and Columns, Contra to Gunstar Heroes, Final Fantasy 3 to Phantasy Star 3, Metal Gear Solid to Siphon Filter, Twisted Metal to Vigilante 8, GoldenEye to Turok 2. You get the idea. This review brings us to Taurus Games' classified The Sentinel Crisis, which came out on May 24, 2005. Not only will the fact that this game was released as a $20 budget title throw up a red flag of suspicion, but Taurus Games is also an Australian developer whose resume from 1996 to 2006 includes a DOS game called Touring Car Champions, Carmageddon TDR 2000, and some game called Ashen for the N-Gage. Oof. Surprisingly, they're still around nowadays, but are unsurprisingly making more mediocre games for Nintendo's 3DS and Wii U, along with the occasional oddity like Scooby-Doo First Frights and Monster Jam Urban Assault.
No kidding. I looked. Unless you count a couple of half-hearted ports on the Game Boy Advance and that Ashen game on the N-Gage, this is the only first-person shooter Taurus Games has made in their entire 19 years in the video game industry. And I got a bad feeling we're about to experience a bigger crisis than any Sentinels could ever hope to cause. Here goes nothing.
So let's start at the very beginning, with what's inside the case. Looks like we have another glorious 5-page manual. Not only that, but these 5 pages along with the back of the case can't even get the name of your weapon straight. Here it says that one of my multi-function tools is the OIWC assault rifle, but the screenshot caption here says I have the MK29 personal weapon, and the manual even states that I have the SIWC assault rifle. So, which is it? Am I using the OIWC or the SIWC assault rifle? Was one of them a typo? And since the MK29 is a personal weapon, is that a code name for my lady saber? Not a great job on the presentation here, guys. Loading the game up past the logo screens into the main menu unsurprisingly helps this one scream budget game. The menus are limited and straightforward. The control type, among your standard fare of adjustments and options, gives you the choice of A or B, but doesn't show the differences between them. There seems to be zero sign of multiplayer anywhere, but the option to use your custom soundtrack is nice. Since playing through the game on normal my first time through was too easy for me personally, we're doing this shit up for real this time, on hard mode. The game itself looks serviceable at first glance and also goes on to redeem its 5-page pamphlet with Captain Gruff McSoldier voice giving you a quick tut of your heads-up display.
On approach, ETA-2 to the LZ. Confirmed. Morning, Collins. Take a moment to look around while I ready our systems. As you know, this is the first field trial for the prototype Sentinel suit you're wearing, so we'll do this by the book. Bringing suit online. Comms link nominal. Weapons link nominal. Heading 290. Confirmed. Bringing the HUD online. The HUD will provide you with any and all information you will require in the field. Pay attention to it, it will save your life. First up, health and suit integrity. The gauge on the bottom left is your health. The suit monitors your health status and will assist in pain and injury management. The bar on the top left indicates the suit's armor integrity. Damage absorption and self-repair status is shown here. The suit will repair itself so long as you are not sustaining damage. Weapons interface. The suit and your XM-29 assault weapon are dynamically linked. Your HUD will detail ammunition, weapon status, and firing mode. This is the HUD's targeting assist reticule. Target information acquisition and threat assessment is handled here. The reticule will change to suit the XM-29 firing mode. Visual on LZ. Commence drop sequence. The communications filter will manage audio and text feeds from HQ and provide real-time language translation in the field. Okay, all systems are nominal. You will receive an updated mission briefing on the ground, but for now, I'll remind you of the mission priorities. You must contact a man by the name of Carlo. He will help you find one of our men, the man who designed your suit. Tracking enemy fire. Countermeasures active. What's going on? Impact! Impact! Evasive!
After another quick loading screen, we're officially off to the races. Get used to Colonel Meathead, who shall not be named, giving you orders for the rest of the game. The story here is pretty stock, even for 2005. You're a Black Ops soldier named Collins, who was recruited into a top-secret program called Sentinel to be the first official crash test dummy for the results of this project. The first being an intelligent combat suit that provides Collins with extensive data surveillance according to the manual, rechargeable shields, and a built-in enhanced transmitter for your allies to communicate objectives to you. The second result of the program is your OIWC, SIWC, XM29, whatever the fuck, multifunction weapon. You'll be seeing this for most of the game since you will occasionally come across upgrades for it in order for you to switch between firing modes, which is pretty interesting and something you don't see all that often. Also, don't forget to check out the pause screen for more detailed objectives, to change sound or control options, restart the current mission, or quit back to the main menu. This can be brought up with the start button. Speaking of your mission, your main objective is to rescue a missing scientist named Dr. Landau, who is the one who designed all this fancy equipment. Problem is, he was last spotted in the Balkans. Yeah, somewhere in here. And to recover him, you'll have to traverse through the middle of a conflict between your not-so-friendly neighborhood ethnic cleanser Dragomir Radovan, who is in charge of the local militia forces and is believed to have kidnapped Dr. Landau himself, and in the other corner, the rebel forces who don't think Radovan's vision of mass genocide isn't such a great idea, whose leader is named Carlo.
So, somehow Carlo already knows about you, knows you're coming to assist him and the rebel forces to drive back Radovan's militia in exchange for locating Radovan's headquarters, where we believe Dr. Landau is being held captive. We're not entirely sure. It's up in the air at this point. And on top of that, he knows about your Sentinel equipment and the capabilities of it, so it's a pretty sure bet he knows about the Sentinel program as a whole as well. Is it really that great of an idea to have this foreign group of freedom fighters know basically everything about what we're doing when we barely know them? I mean, they know everything about our mission and our existence now, practically, all in what amounts to this pinky promise. Top secret operation, my nuts.
Moving on to controls, the game actually does a decent job with the tooltips as Collins starts breaking into the Sentinel suit. If you've played other FPS games on the Xbox, you'll feel at home here. Left thumbstick moves and makes you crouch when clicking it in. Right thumbstick is used to look around. The white and black buttons cycle through the different modes for your weapon. The D-pad works the previously mentioned data surveillance abilities of your suit by toggling night vision, zoom, and an enemy scanner. Right trigger fires, left trigger works the sniper's enhanced zoom, and rounding out the rest of the gamepad are the face button actions. A jumps, X reloads, B is a melee attack, and Y does nothing? While on the subject of controls, the mysterious control set B from the options menu, either in-game or from the main menu, causes the following modifications. B switches to cycling your gun modes, sniper zoom switches to pushing in the right thumbstick, left trigger jumps, white and black crouch and melee respectively, Y reloads, and up on the D-pad is your normal zoom. I felt more comfortable with the default layout. The controls are good for the most part, aside from aiming feeling a bit on the stiff side, especially when using the assault rifle from a distance. The other gun mode you start the game with, the sniper rifle, alleviates this issue a bit, but its ammo is limited and is hardly ideal to use in close quarters. The melee attack is pretty much useless, but the enemy scanner is the complete opposite since it can point out enemies that seem to blend into the environment. The partial zoom that's activated when pressing down on the D-pad is useful, but don't get too used to it as it slows Collins down to a crawl and makes him more susceptible to enemy fire. Speaking of gunfire, the sound effects are the biggest letdown of this game to me. The gunshots in this game sound wimpy and dull. Your assault rifle has RL characteristics a notch above a Nerf gun, and explosions that go off in front of you or cause nearby fuel drums or vehicles to explode go off with the power and force of a wet fart. I wish they beefed up the sound effects a lot more. The music does its job, but is ultimately forgettable. A bunch of generic techno-like loops that aren't offensive and are better than no music at all, but nothing that will get stuck in your head anytime soon. The graphics, as you can see for yourself, aren't the best for 2005, but considering this is what Taurus Games put together on their limited budget and expertise in the genre, they're not that bad. Smoke trails from tank shells look cool, helicopters look well detailed given the engine, and overall there's nothing to really complain about. While the level design is linear to the point where it's impossible to get lost at any point in the game, and there's not much in the way of secret areas other than the occasional ammo and health stockpiles a bit off the beaten path, I didn't encounter any major sequence breaking glitches or bugs at all, which is impressive to see, especially nowadays. It's a sad state of gaming when a $20 budget game from 2005 is ultimately solid and AAA titles released nowadays fall apart like silly putty over the smallest fucking thing. The critics were a bit too harsh on the AI from what I've seen. While some of them will stand in place like glorified statues waiting for Collins to shoot them in the face, they also will make an effort to lean out of cover, crouch behind cover, and even try to sneak up on you when you duck behind a wall waiting for your shield armor to regenerate. And shit gets real when you throw grenades into the mix. Utilizing your grenade launcher causes enemies to go sprinting for cover, which is a nice touch, and when they throw grenades at you, they always seem to land right on your balls no matter where you are. Seriously, I've been hit with grenades while hiding in snow-covered hills, across courtyards, on rooftops and rafters, you name it. I hope Southeast Europe doesn't enter the fucking javelin throwing competition in the Olympics, or everyone else might as well pack up and just go home. Going back to the story itself, the campaign here is straightforward due to the linearity I mentioned earlier. Your super soldier has to first make his way through the city to gather missing pieces of some kind of super antenna from the helicopter crash that Radovan's militia force have recovered and are now guarding. Lucky for you, though, your suit tells you exactly where you need to go thanks to the waypoints on your screen, but there are a few little obtuse level design decisions lying around, like ammo boxes littered in places where you can't reach, and various crates and boxes that can't be busted open. How do we know for a fact that these antenna parts that got violently thrown from an exploding helicopter still work anyway? And what's with the barbed wire? A hail of gunfire barely phases our Black Ops soldier, but don't let barbed wire scrape against his armor. What the fuck is this Sentinel suit made out of? Construction paper? You get eased into the role of Collins by receiving the aforementioned tooltips while dispatching Radovan's goons, finding parts to use your weapon as a grenade launcher, and eventually find the last part of the antenna. From here you are advised to climb near the top of an old 20-story newspaper building that looks like it's about to crumble into pebbles at any second. Maybe you guys can control your excitement for our mission better than I can at this point. My turret could explode at any Oh, back to work. After clearing out the perimeter of the newspaper building and finding an elevator on the inside, we find out what the mystery is behind the Y button. It's an action button. The game shows a hand symbol whenever a button like this can be manipulated. The top of the building shows an outline of where the antenna can be placed, which first introduces us to Carlo. The pleasantries are skipped for the most part, and Carlo immediately asks you to dispatch a few snipers hiding out in nearby buildings before proceeding to an extraction point. Well, okay, doesn't seem too hard. Let me just get behind cover here and line up my shot. What the hell is this guy doing?
I'm sexy and I know it. Aye.
The fallen column of the building that is knocked down by a jet that quickly whizzes by after dispatching the snipers gives a little flair to the otherwise mundane environments, and are moments that are few and far between. After escaping the mean streets of the Balkans, Collins and Carlo finally meet face to face to agree that we will help the rebel forces in exchange for getting Dr. Landau's whereabouts. We also see that Collins is a graduate from the Gordon Freeman School of Acting.
You help my people fight Radovan, and I will help you find your missing doctor. Fair? Good.
No, he doesn't say anything for the entire game, and barely makes a gesture in every cutscene he is in. Zero personality. He could be called Fuck Brownie and be dressed as a milk carton with a giant swirly straw coming out of his ass, and he still wouldn't even be slightly interesting. At least Gordon Freeman was an MIT graduate, renowned scientist, and uses a crowbar as somewhat of a symbol of surviving against all odds. Your character in this game might as well be non-existent. We then go to a nearby village that Carlo and the rebel forces have been holding against Radovan's militia before they start to become overrun from an invasion. Your allies keep the long-standing tradition in video games by being nothing more than target practice for the enemy while your one-man army blazes a trail of destruction through the village, but not before helping one of Carlo's commanders for both of you to reach him at the other end of the complex. There isn't much time to relax, however, as we have to clear the heavy gunners and snipers off of the bridge connecting the two keeps the rebel forces now inhabit. Carlo then jots a few more things down on your chores list by having you advance through the west side of the village and eventually make your way to the village square to help out a small platoon of his soldiers. This plan quickly gets botched when the small squad of rebels gets overwhelmed by enemy forces whom spill out into the square while you barely manage to hold them off. At this point, you're told to rendezvous with Carlo by escaping the square through the giant hole in the courtyard wall to the west of where you came in, as the north and east exits result in instant death as the roads are blocked with enemy tanks. After making your way back to the bridge where Carlo is, he informs you of the shipment of explosives he is set to receive, which is then airdropped outside of the drop zone. Since everyone nearby in the entire rebel army has apparently lost the use of their arms, it's up to you to follow a scout down to where the explosives landed near the beginning of where we started in the village in the first place. Moments after the demolition equipment is retrieved, the enemy predictably launches another assault on the village, causing you to fight your way back up to the keep. Again. This time we have to head across the bridge and underground to place bombs in order to blow the bridge before Radovan's threatening fleet of a whole 2 ships manages to arrive with supplies and reinforcements while the rebel forces can retreat. You will be introduced to the shotgun at this point, which you think would be good to use in a close quarters section like this, but it has all the force of a Red Ryder BB gun. You'll hardly ever use it again since virtually all of your other weapons work better at any range, and unless you're really low on ammo for your other weapons for some reason, since most ammo is plentiful in this game. When the final explosive is placed under the bridge's columns underground, you are given a time limit to escape the tunnels. Since it is a short distance back to the surface with only a couple of small empty rooms to feebly attempt to throw you off, you will have plenty of time to escape to Carlo, who is waiting for you in a boat. We then cut to Rebel HQ, where Carlo tells Collins about Radovan's main base hidden in the mountains nearby. This is where he also supposedly hides his quote-unquote political prisoners, hinting at where Dr. Landau may be. How does he know this, you might ask? After Carlo offers to show us where the base is, we are unceremoniously dumped into the Himalayas somewhere, where Captain Scruff McGruff also doubles as Captain Obvious by telling you how the path to Radovan's base is heavily defended. No kidding, you don't say. Shooting your way through the level results in finding a bridge to cross to the next area when it suddenly decides to collapse into the ether and a tank starts taking pot shots at you from the other side. It's a good thing this fence with a nice big hole in it is nearby for us to sneak further inside. We're then told to find a cable car found nearby that we can safely ride up to Radovan's hideout. The good news here is that we can find our RPG launcher attachment that can be used to good effect. But after infiltrating the main building in the nearby area, you will find the cable car is missing, but made aware that an access tunnel nearby can be used, but not before finding a couple of explosives to plant in the rafters of the tunnel so militia troops cannot pursue you. At least it's a better idea than sticking out like a giant floating bullseye in the sky moving at 5 miles per hour in an area swarming with soldiers equipped with grenades, rocket launchers, and God knows what else. It doesn't take long to find out why the cable car is missing in the next section when you'll see it lurking by with enemies using it in an attempt to catch you off guard. After fighting your way up the mountain yet again and avoiding a bombing run from the enemy's helicopter, we are then ordered to use our spare brick of C4 to blow up the cable car motor to stop the enemy from using it. Good news though, there's another private service car that leads straight up to Radovan's fortress. And what do you know? You have to contend with being a giant floating bullseye moving at 5 miles per hour with a damage meter no less, riding through an area swarming with soldiers equipped with grenades, rocket launchers, and machine guns while avoiding running into crates of explosives placed in the middle of the tracks? What the fuck is this, a Looney Tunes cartoon? This section isn't too annoying thanks to most of the enemies here being as sharp as a bag of pudding, but it's frightening to think that Taurus Games put this section here on purpose to, dare I say it, add a spice of variety to this game. Not exactly the best place to make a rail shooting section that puts an enormous magnifying glass on two of the main issues with this one. Cumbersome aiming, and AI that only manages to be slightly more adequate than my left nut when they're standing completely still staring ahead blankly waiting to be shot in the face. After finally arriving at Radovan's super-secret residence and finding our way inside, we find a supposed ally who waves us inside when suddenly the floor gives out to swallow us up into the darkness. What happens next has to be seen and heard to be believed.
Gentlemen, please, say hello to my rescuer. You've done terribly well, you know, Captain. You should be proud. I couldn't have hoped for a better delivery boy. So diligent, so trusting. Oh, you seem confused, Captain. Are you having trouble following me? It must be the suit. It's making things hard for you, isn't it? It can do that. Best we take it off you, yes? Let the big kids play with it now.
A special delivery boy? Let the big kids play with it now? Jesus Christ. Overact much, dude? Turn it down a few notches. I mean, which circle of hell did that voice actor and script both come from anyway?
They even scared off the poor sap who was supposed to voice General Radovan, who ends up offering even less input than Collins does throughout the entire game. And it's not bad enough we're now trapped in a dungeon and bound so tight we can barely move, and we're stuck to a dirty mattress that's probably covered in rat shit and 60 other diseases, but on top of it all, we had to listen to that guy talk. So here we are. What a brilliant display of intelligence this plan was, guys. It makes me wonder what the escape plan would have been if Dr. Nightmare-fueled voice here decided to not pull a predictable double cross and actually decided to flee the area with us. So now we're on top of a mountain in the middle of nowhere with the only way back down is a busted up cable car now riddled full of bullets and probably about to explode at any moment. And even if we could survive a second ride on that, we already completely destroyed the motor to the next cable car down, completely nullifying a quick escape back to the starting point. And on top of it all, we obliterated the access tunnel so we can't even escape on foot. So tell me, was there supposed to be some kind of escape vehicle or some kind of extraction via helicopter or something? Or were we just supposed to hide in the woods and jerk each other off until we both starved and or froze to death?
Foresight wasn't completely lost, however, when we find out that Collins has an emergency radio on him and receives a communication from Captain Buzzcut, who gives the helpful suggestion to escape the complex.
And I don't even want to dare to dream where this emergency radio is on or in our protagonist when the very creator of the Sentinel suit himself was present when we were stripped of it. You would think a very thorough equipment search would be conducted where a small radio would be found, or at the very least expected.
The first things you will notice is the health bar in the lower right corner of the screen showing off our newfound vulnerability and our new punch ability. Using this discovery, escaping our prison cell is a cinch due to the blindingly obvious loose metal plate in the wall. This reveals a tunnel that gives way to a room below and into the compound's lower levels. It thankfully doesn't take us long to find a silenced pistol up ahead to help us along the way. Ooh, right in the coin purse. That'll ruin anyone's day. From here, it's just a matter of going from room to room carefully and dropping soldiers with a shot or two. Eventually, we will get to the surface of the complex, receive word of the whereabouts of the Sentinel suit in a nearby lab, and retrieve the suit after cutting power to the facility. After that, we go back to gunning down dozens and dozens of enemy soldiers while working our way back through the compound, leaving death, destruction, and explosions in our wake to leave Radovan's headquarters as a giant crater in the mountains. Another weapon upgrade can be had before going back underground that's labeled as the AR Coolant and Gyro. I don't really notice much of a difference with it, but it's easy to miss here in this small room. We then cut to our super soldier moseying into Rebel HQ like nothing happened, where Carlo informs us that Radovan and Landau have slipped through the premises we just escaped from. But it's okay, Radovan has a second base that we can sneak into while Carlo and the Rebel forces launch a diversion with a surprise attack.
How? Where? Why? I'm not a retard that needs everything spoon-fed to me, don't get me wrong, but it's very challenging to stay fully engaged in a story when it completely and utterly lacks any type of continuity. If all the routes we took up to Radovan's super-secret Castlevania mansion before are now inoperable, how did we escape from there? Did our commander or whatever the fuck send in an extraction team to pick us up? I can buy that if they just threw in an extra line of dialogue or two explaining it. And again, how does Carlo know where all of Radovan's bases are? Does he have scouts or people that go out and gather intelligence and relay it back to him? Again, just make a mention of it to tie up these loose ends that are flopping in my face the entire time like floppy dicks of bemusement.
We then begin our glorious assault on Radovan's military complex here, where we have to reach his war room hidden deep within. While the night sky doesn't do all that much to help conceal you from the enemy when you start shooting your way through the place, the lack of visibility here is a bit annoying. If only we had some special ability within our suit to help us see in the dark that wouldn't alert any foes. Let's see here. Wait a second. Night vision? I had night vision the entire time? It's easy to see this when you have the manual, but this is interestingly the only feature in the game that is not explained in the previous on-screen tooltips. I thought I just didn't notice it on my first playthrough, but after looking for it on my second playthrough, the tooltip never showed up. Weird.
Speaking of easy to miss things, check out this weapon power-up that's hidden in this pipe here that I missed the first time through. This is an X-Impact Silencer upgrade for your assault rifle that I guess lowers the sound of your shots and makes them slightly more powerful. Again, I really didn't notice a difference with this attachment either. Anyway, we end up sneaking up to a set of rafters where we can access valves on 6 fuel tanks. It's suggested to blow the tanks in order to distract the majority of enemy guards in the area so that we can sneak further into the base towards Radovan's war room, which works, I suppose. There's not that many enemies in each level in the first place, so wasn't that overkill? After some more stealthy murdering, we eventually come to a large office building where we find a perfect vantage point that conveniently gives us a clear view to send Radovan a special ballistic telegram. This obviously puts the base on high alert, causing us to have to battle out and escape.
Perfect. Now get out of there.
Back at Rebel HQ once more, Carlo announces delivering a final blow to Radovan's militia now that they are scattered without their leader when they take the initiative and lead a surprise attack on the Rebel Force building. After clearing out the building, fighting our way to the roof, and finding our final weapon attachment, the Predator chain gun, Carlo then radios in for assistance back by the briefing room for you to help the Rebels clear out RPG soldiers from the adjacent building using your sniper rifle. This section can get a bit hectic thanks to having to hold the building's integrity up from explosions, the random enemy spawns, and aiming so stiff that you will battle with the crosshair on your screen more often than the infantry. Luckily, soldiers with RPG launchers seem to spawn in the same two places. Just keep an eye on them, and eventually Carlo will radio you once again to meet in the main hall of the building to mount an offensive to drive Radovan's lieutenants back.
Today, we will end it all. Radovan is dead, but his lieutenants fight on.
We're then tasked to move against the enemy by going into their building across the courtyard, clearing everyone out, especially the snipers, and moving up to take out a few incoming tanks in the city area beyond with our trusty RPG launcher. When we turn the tanks into burnt scrap metal, we then have to go to a nearby train yard to take out the motor guns that the enemy has set up in an effort to take out the rebel base from a distance. Do these idiots ever give up? After clearing out the train yard and returning to where Carlo is, we see the enemy has reoccupied the building across from the rebel headquarters and have to clear it out once again. Seriously, guys? You couldn't hold this area for like 20 minutes? Do you want me to wipe each one of your asses and tie your boots too? After clearing out the building, our waypoint marker leads us to a fatally wounded Carlo who gives his dying request to lead the rebels to victory after coming this far. The rebels launch a final assault on the main militia headquarters located on the other end of the war-torn city with an armored APC vehicle we must defend. This doesn't seem like a big deal at first until Buzzcut here chimes in again telling us to quickly find a vantage point to take out the RPG soldiers stationed in the lookout towers above the base. A few sniper shots later, our APC charges through the gates and gives us access to the final part of the game. There's not really much to say here. We go guns a-blazing through the base like we have for the past few hours and notice that a few soldiers are even in Sentinel suits of their own, which means Landau's lab is nearby. After fighting all the way down to the traitorous Doctor's Sentinel lab, we find that he has been in the process of creating new Sentinel suits for the enemy army.
My God, they could produce thousands of suits with this setup.
Ah, it's the delivery boy! You found me again. How persistent of you! You like my factory? It makes suits! Although I do see you're still wearing last season's model.
When we finally encounter the Doctor, he is in an upgraded model of the Sentinel suit himself, and runs to one of the 4 nearby charge stations to heal himself when his armor gets low, which only takes a few seconds of getting ripped apart by the Predator, and also unleashes a squad of Sentinel drones to help take you down. Let the big kids play with it now? This toy is only for adults with a full-grown sack, bitch! Take it! Eventually, Landau keels over, you are praised as a hero and liberator, and the game finally manages to show you the helicopter that I can only assume has been what is responsible for taking us from place to place so quickly throughout your mission.
Yeah, and that's basically it for this one. Since there's no multiplayer at all, you just get a strict, predictable, by-the-numbers single-player campaign that doesn't even dare to stray from its comfort zone even a little bit. I thought this would be a far more compelling gaming experience when I first started playing it, but to tell you guys the truth, it's so been there, done that my interest completely flatlined towards the end of my second playthrough. And I do respect the game for its honesty and transparency because it's not trying to be something it's not like so many other games do. Even with its MSRP on release of $20, this game doesn't hide anywhere that it's a budget title, so I give it a point for that. And speaking of points, coming to the pros and cons of this little puppy here, the weapon system is gimmicky overall, I'll say that, but it is unique and it's not something you see every day, so I'll give it a point for that as well. The story is serviceable without being too stupid, and the tooltips on the HUD that you get in the first half or so of the game are useful and easy to understand. And they also adapt if you use the different control setting and options in this game. They do adapt to that as well, so I like that. On the negative side, however, you have the lackluster sound effects that sound far less intimidating than an arsenal of Nerf weapons. You have the subpar AI routines, you have the cumbersome aiming with the majority of every single weapon in this game that sucked, and again, coming back to the lack of multiplayer, especially for a shooter made in 2005, it's just puzzling. The only way I can recommend playing this game is if you were in a unique situation where you were held at gunpoint and you had to play every single Xbox exclusive there was out there. Since, especially if you're like me and you're a big fan of the genre, there's absolutely nothing new or fresh or clever at all about anything in this game that makes it stand out on its own. And another little tidbit I did pass by in the previous sections of this video is this game was almost not an exclusive. It is missing the only on Xbox insignia that's usually here for exclusive Xbox games, and the reason for that is there was actually a PlayStation 2 version of this game that was planned, but it got canceled, and the rumor it got canceled was because they saw how badly this bombed with both the gaming press and the gamers themselves, and they subsequently canceled the PS2 version. Couldn't imagine why. So, going back to the idea I came up with in the beginning of this video, where smaller development studios take ideas from the revolutionary AAA blockbuster games and they try to put unique spins on their own universe and try to put individual quirks in their own game to make it stand out, well, this is a perfect example of a game that does not stand out. Sadly, yeah. 2 out of 5 stars for this dud. I wouldn't even waste your time. And that's my mantra, guys. Thank you for watching again, as always. Thank you for your patience, as always. I've already started, I'm well into mantra number 6. That's going to come as soon as, my real life responsibilities and all that crap stop pestering me. So, I'll see you guys next time. More Duke out.